for this Rewind Thoughts, surprisingly, again, it's going to be a follow-up on my thoughts on why SNK Playmore refused to release SVC Chaos for the PlayStation 2 in the US. By now, you heard about the news. The producer for King of Fighter 15, Oda, basically said something interesting that both sides, Capcom and SNK, are interested of doing once again a crossover collaboration of Capcom cross SNK. So of course in 2020 I did a lot of Capcom versus SNK related videos. So with that said, first of all, that's really interesting. But then on this particular rewind, I'm gonna once again give my introductory thought of the game that I showcased for SVC Chaos, SNK versus Capcom, as well with Capcom versus SNK, Millennium Fight 2000, and Capcom versus SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001. So I kind of gave some sort of back history about this game because, like I said, I like this series. So hopefully in the long run, it may not be Capcom versus SNK 3, but it would be a good idea. My personal opinion, but I think a lot of people are going to agree that either Capcom or SNK do a collaboration and do a Capcom SNK collection, adding in Capcom versus SNK 1 and 2, SVC Chaos, SNK versus Capcom Mark of the Millennium, and the card game on a disc for multiple platforms. And it's called, if you can see this right here, Capcom versus SNK Pro for the PlayStation. Remember, the PS3 can play PlayStation 1 game, not 2, but 1. Here's the back cover. Remember the PlayStation cover? Instead of in the Blu-ray disc cover, it's a CD. You put the manual here and a CD case sleeve and design inside here. Oh my goodness, 1990 stuff. The games of the 32-bit era. So anyway, Capcom versus SNK Pro. The backstory here is that unless you're an old school fighting game community, this is one of the best games. Capcom and SNK. What happened if they duke it out in the fight? So there you go. You got the cash from Capcom versus SNK. And starting in 2000, both Capcom and SNK made the game. And the backstory of the deal was both Capcom and SNK are required to develop at least 2 games. Doesn't matter what medium, what media it is, what system is it for, as long as they have to do 2 games. That's what the contract is. Alright, so I want to make a correction from my rewind there. So like I said, that video was made way in the past. But the correction that I want to do was that in that video I said 2 games for both sides. In actuality, that was actually a mistake. The actual deal for the collaboration are that both Capcom and SNK must at least do 1 fighting crossover game for the arcade. So that's the keyword there, the arcade. And they can do other franchise, other game of the based on the crossover, but they have to at least do 1 game that is for arcade. So in the Capcom side, it's actually Capcom versus SNK Millennium Fight 2000. It was 14 arcade. Of course, there was a Dreamcast version, but unfortunately, that was only in Japan due to the fact that, well, the Dreamcast outside of Japan, well, it sucks if you know the history of that one. At the same time, for the SNK side, was SVC Chaos, SNK versus Capcom. So those are the arcade one. And what happened was in the Capcom side, they said, hey, you know what? This game was good. People liked it. We were getting a lot of praise. So why not do a sequel to it? So they did. And there you go, Capcom versus SNK 2, which is the superior versus the other games. Sorry, but you know it's the truth. And SNK said, you know, we have the Neo Geo Pocket. Why not? Let's make a fighting game titled Match of the Millennium, SNK versus Capcom.
And of course, that one, to some extent, what's the beneficial of that? Well, you can play it on the go. I mean, Neo Pocket is actually cool, but at the same time, if you plug it in on the Dreamcast, you actually unlock 2 new characters exclusively. So, yeah, believe it or not, there was some sort of integration with the Dreamcast and the Neo Geo Pocket. But of course, if you follow the Neo Geo Pocket, at some point, they decided to just recall it outside of Japan and just shift it to Japan. Different story there. But yeah, so again, the correction is that the deal was that at least Capcom and SNK do one game for the arcade. So again, those games are Capcom vs. SNK, Millennium Fight 2000, and SVC Chaos, SNK versus Capcom.
Capcom, of course, did Capcom vs. SNK, and then they made an upgrade version for the Dreamcast in the PS1, which is Pro, by adding in 2 new characters. I'll explain that later. And then, of course, Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001. And for SNK, they did SNK versus Capcom Millennium of the Fight 2000 for the Neo Geo Pocket. And maybe in the future, I'll probably do a showcase on Neo Geo Pocket. I did already, I think, 2 showcase games, and I actually did a showcase on SNK vs. Capcom for the Neo Geo Pocket. I'll probably put that in the description. It's going to be in the description, the link. So they did that one, and another one, maybe in the near future, I'll also do this showcase called SNK vs. Capcom. SNK's version of Capcom vs. SNK, unfortunately, it really wasn't that good. And I mean, I was still a fan of SNK on support. I really wanted that game. But what happened was that in the PS2 era, it was originally going to be ported to the PS2, but SNK decided not to, made it an Xbox exclusive, because the reason is it was a price issue, and it got me upset about it. And when I emailed SNK saying if there's any way to bring it to the PS2, and they just said nope, no chance. They never did. And a lot of the fans who are a PS2 owner but as an SNK fan, they were upset. And then of course they did rectify that in 2007, because by then the PS3 was out. So they did bring in a lot of SNK games for $15, but that's going to be another story. So anyway, let's start this showcase. Capcom versus SNK Pro. So here we go.
So if you saw the ending for episode 219, you saw what the next showcase is, and that is Capcom versus SNK Millennium Fight 2000. Yes, so of course I did this showcase and commentary way in the back, way in the past for the PS1. So I used my PS3 because it's backwards compatible. You know, backwards compatible, cool thing for the console, but whatever. Some people think it's horse poppy, but whatever. So I did a live feed on down rather than a direct feed. So, but with that said, now let's just say I'm able to make showcase from the Sega Dreamcast. So with that, this is Capcom versus SNK Millennium Fight 2000, where this is the Capcom version of the collaboration. So of course you can tell it's more, well, quality-wise, they're using the Naomi board. So it's a new board basically based on the Dreamcast. So you kind of see it there. And of course, believe it or not, this Dreamcast version actually has a integration with the Neo Geo Pocket, surprisingly. And also I enjoy the extra tidbit they did for this game, such as the artist for the profile characters. So of course, been following SNK, you know, an artist by the name of Shinkiro, now works for Capcom, but of course is known for doing SNK illustration. So at the time when he was still working for SNK, he did a SNK illustration for the Capcom side, while at the same time, Kino Nishimura from the Capcom, he did a lot of Capcom illustration, also known for doing Code of Princess, the Bikini Princess Warriors, another game. He also did not only for the Capcom side, of course, SNK version of that style. So it depends on which groove you pick. Whatever groove you pick, it's gonna be the illustration, whether from SNK, from Shinkiro, or Capcom from Nishimura. And speaking of groove, of course, interesting part of this game is, I don't know it works or not. Maybe in 2020, probably it's not gonna work now. But in the past, it was something interesting, able to use different mechanic, special moves for the game. So either there's a Capcom system, which is based on Street Fighter Alpha series, or the SNK special, which they call them Groove, based on King of Fighter 94 and 95. I mean, it sort of worked this one. Like I said, it is sort of interesting, but if they trying to do this something for 2020 or beyond for a fighting game, maybe not, but still, I still enjoy this game. And yeah, see for yourself. I mean, it's not running on a CPS engine. It's actually a new engine, and the graphics is awesome, man. This is one of my favorite, like I said, versus series, Capcom versus SNK. I mean, like I said, SNK versus Capcom Chaos was cool, but when it comes to the quality and the market, the mechanics, and the architect, well, come on, Capcom. So here it is, check it out, Capcom versus SNK, Millennium Fight 2000 for the Dreamcast. And as an added bonus, I'm also going to showcase its upgraded version. Well, not so much, they just added some new stuff, which basically you already saw when I did the Mega Mix Game showcase and commentary of Capcom vs SNK Pro for the PlayStation. So of course, like I said, this one is on the Dreamcast. So what are the difference? What are the new stuff they added in there? Well, basically all the EX characters are unlocked, which is one of the thing that the original didn't have, is that you have to unlock those EX characters, which is Echo Fighters, if you know what I mean. Also, they added 2 new characters, Dan Hibiki and Joe Higashi. And of course, all the hidden characters are also unlocked. In the original one, well, it's much easier than doing button sequence, but you have to accumulate some fight money. It's from Street Fighter 5 or some points, you get what I mean. But you gotta accumulate until that, hey, you have enough, and then you can buy whatever. For Pro, you don't have to do that. And of course, they also introduced pair mode, which is just 2 on 2, because I'm not gonna lie to you, the ratio system is not really working. I mean, really 4-man team ratio ones, I'm like, that kind of make it drag the matches, to tell you the truth. I would say stuck with 3 characters. If you're gonna do a King of Fighter style, 3 out of 5, that's all you need to do. But whatever, they were trying something new. I mean, it is what it is. So there you go. Like I said, one of my favorite series. So this one is Capcom vs SNK Pro, and of course you're gonna get to see how Joe and Dan plays. Also, I just want to point this out that Capcom vs SNK Millennium Fight 2000 actually came out outside of Japan for the Dreamcast. However, for this one, Pro did not, due to the fact that by the time this game was released outside of Japan, the Dreamcast they were stop production. They ceased all operation for it, so it's kind of unfortunate. But like I said, there's a reason why they brought out the PlayStation 1 version of Capcom vs SNK Pro. Surprise! Yes! Episode 220 will also have a bonus episode, and that is Capcom vs SNK Pro for the PlayStation. Yes, so I already did this long time ago. Of course, you saw the rewind. However, that one, if you notice, it was a live feed, so I had to use my camcorder. So now, in some way, I was able to do a direct feed with this game. So this is the reason why it's going to be part of episode 220 as a bonus showcase. And the deal about this one is, like I said, the good thing about it is if you never played Capcom vs. SNK, you don't have a PlayStation 2, this is a good alternative. When I bought this game, it was $20. I saw it at Best Buy. So again, it does run well for what it's supposed to be a Naomi board or the Dreamcast. I mean, there are some compromise because come on, you know, PlayStation 1 versus Dreamcast, the horsepower there. So, but for what it is, I actually enjoyed it myself, and it's easier to unlock stuff for this one. So, unlike the Japanese version of Capcom vs. SNK Pro, for this one, actually, you do have to unlock some stuff, but it's kind of easy. It's like unlocking the EX character is 50 points, while unlocking an actual character is like 300 points. And I kind of did it, so I'm surprised also. The actual game, like, actually, I have. So, with this showcase, again, here it is, the PlayStation version, and I'm surprised it never was on the PSN. It would be nice, but I know it's a deal with Capcom vs. SNK, right there. So, but it's kind of funny, yet Capcom vs. SNK 2 was on the PS. It's kind of weird there, but again, a good alternative if you don't have a Dreamcast, never played the first one, or a PS2 at a time, because this one was released on 2002, and I actually enjoyed it. And the reason why I sort of like this one a bit than the second one, not so much. I do prefer the second one because it has everything, the features was better. But in the case with this one, it actually has Kyo 95 to some extent, aka Kusanagi from King Fighter 2002 and Unlimited Match. So hopefully he'll come back in a future King Fighter game, but whatever. So that's the only reason why I kind of enjoy this. So I get to play as Kyo 95. Because in the sequel, you don't really get to play that version, because what they did with the sequel is they combined the two versions, the EX and the normal version. So you got multiple moveset. It's kind of weird, but it's also interesting, believe it or not. So Kyo actually has red kick, and he has that triple angle kick at the same time. So kind of interesting. And backstory with that one is, if you ever play Kyo in King Fighter 11, he kind of have both moves, which is okay. That's interesting. However, in King Fighter 14, is back to some sort of modified Kyo 98 with NAS cartel moves, but I don't know. I digress. I mean, I just kind of miss Kyo 95. That's really it. So with that, here it is, the bonus showcase for episode 220, Capcom vs. SNK Pro for the PlayStation. Yes, folks, you're actually not seeing an illusion. Episode 219 will be SNK versus Capcom SVC Chaos. So finally, I'm gonna do a main showcase of this game, because in the past I actually did say time and time again, someday I'm gonna do a showcase. So finally, here it is. Managed to play the game by, well, I mean, whatever necessary needed to play the game. So the backstory is that I am a fan of SNK and Capcom. One of my favorite versus series, believe it or not, is the Capcom versus SNK series, or the SNK versus Capcom series. So basically those two company crossover, kind of like it. I actually enjoyed it. I did actually play the one on the Neo Geo Pocket. Of course, you kind of saw that in a rewind. As well, of course, Capcom vs. SNK Pro for the PlayStation, and its sequel on the PlayStation 2. Of course, those also got a MMGS Rewind treatment. So the reason I chose this one for episode 219, there's a lot of controversy behind this game. So when it first announced for the PlayStation 2 in the West, in the US, I was excited about it because I was a sort of an uber SNK fan. I wanted to support SNK, so I was willing to buy their game. But at the same time, it has to be logistic, and that's a keyword there, because a lot of people found out that apparently Sony Computer Entertainment of America and SNK Playmore USA were not very into each other. So of course, if you heard the story, why this game was never been in a PS2 version, and a lot of people did want it, is that there was a price issue controversy. Yes, it wasn't really like an official source, but a lot of people factoring that, yeah, it is a price issue. There was a rumor that the president of SNK Playmore in Japan wanted this game to be a normal price as the other game. There was even some sort of political issue. I mean, like, just because it's 2D doesn't necessarily mean it's a lesser value. He was trying to argue that, but Sony said no. And the spoiler is, yeah, like there's a reason why at a point Sony had that anti-2D policy rule. Not because they don't want 2D games. It's because most of us have common sense and logistic that what would I pay SNK versus Capcom Chaos for $50, which they were selling that on the Xbox, while the better version, I'm sorry, it is the truth, Capcom versus SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001 was $40. I mean, you tell me. I mean, for crying out loud, it's even in the PS3 as a PS2 port. I double dip on it because it was like under $5. Come on, $5, dude. You can't deny anything that's under $5. Well, maybe because, you know, I'm making money. But that's a different story there. So there's a lot of controversy with this game. And I always said that I wanted to support SNK, but I want to be logistic about it. And also I wanted to have it in a collection for a PS2. So I actually have Capcom vs. SNK 2 and then SNK vs. Capcom in the collection for PS2. But again, Ben Herman, the president at the time for SNK Playmore, were just being stubborn to a point that, hey, you know what? Okay, fine. You know, this is what you want. This is the way. It's unfortunate. And a lot of people did say, can we have it as a bundle with Metal Slug 3? And again, it was just out of desperation. It's one of the early games that was coming up for the PS2. And the argument was that because one of the character spoilers in the game, Mars People, so they wanted to call it the Mars People combo pack. But then Ben Herman said, yeah, they tried that also. But then Sony said just didn't make sense, which is true. But it was out of desperation. A lot of people, including myself, believe it or not, kind of told Ben Herman. And to a point that Ben Herman said, let's move on, we're done. And I'm like, Ben Herman, screw you. But I mean, doesn't work for SNK anymore, which I'm happy. The guy just sucked. I'm sorry, he sucked. So that's the reason why I chose this one. So with that, here it is, a showcase of SNK versus Capcom SVC Chaos. And of course, believe it or not, there will be additional 2, and I'll show you why. Plus my thoughts about this whole shebang of this game. So stay tuned for that one. For with that, well, enjoy watching this game. Like I said, that in episode 219 there will be 2 more showcase about SVC Chaos. Yeah, so in this particular one, it's also on the third one, this is going to be a little bit tricky. And here's the backstory. Did you know that the game actually has hidden characters? Unfortunately, the legit way to do it in the arcade is you gotta do some code. And of course, in this time of age, people are not a fan of code. You know, you go hide one character and then another character and then you push certain buttons. I mean, let's just say in King of Fire 2002, in order to get Kusanagi, you know, you're gonna have to do that code, and you know, it's just tedious. So in this particular showcase, this is based on just like the very first showcase on the MVS. However, let's just say when you put it in a different platform, you can actually do what most people call it modification. So yeah, so in this particular showcase as well, in the third one, like I said, it's going to be some sort of plus bonus showcase. So this one you're looking at is SVC Codename Plus. So what it is it's the version where the mid bosses and the sub bosses are actually unlocked. So yeah, there are actually some new characters that was interesting that I didn't even know when I first heard about it. So of course you got Geese, Gonzai from the boss for King Fighter 96, and of course in the Capcom side, Dimitri from Darkstalker, come on, and of course you can't really not put Dan, because if you know Dan, he's based off Rio and Robert. So then of course we have sub bosses in the game as well, 4 of them. So first Orochi Yori, come on, everybody knows that, but the other one's interesting, Violent Ken, because if you watch the animated Street Fighter 2 movie, that's where it came from. non-canon to the game, but of course he also made an appearance in Ultra Street Fighter 2, the final challenger for the Switch. I mean, it is what it is. Come on. I mean, is it going to be canon eventually? I don't know. But the most interesting one for here that I got to give kudos to SNK is Mars People from Metal Slug series and Zero from the Mega Man Zero series. So not even Zero from the Mega Man X, which is the one you kind of see from Tatsunoko, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and of course Infinite. Yeah, that game. So this one is actually based on the Mega Man Zero series. It started on the DS, of course now there's like the collection. So in this particular showcase, and the reason I'm showing this is it is kind of interesting. So I'm going to show you some of the characters. I guess some of my favorite ones, 3 of them. So in this one, I'm just going to showcase, of course, Zero from the Zero series. Violent Ken, because I'm a Ken fan. In Street Fighter 5, I like to play as Ken. And then, of course, trying to play Mars People, because in this one, he kind of plays differently than in Neo Geo Battle Sim to some extent, because I mean, he's a hidden character to some extent. I mean, he's not really like a legit playable character. You know what I mean? So with that, here it is, the showcase of SVC, codename Plus. And of course, for the third class bonus showcase of SVC Chaos, this one is, well, what people call it, Super Plus. So another one that, let's just say, it is based on the MVS, but again, with modification on a certain platform. So, and I said before in my previous video, in order to play all this character, you gotta do a code, and again, doing some weird button sequence, character highlighting, whatever, in 2020, it's not fun, it's not cool. Gotta keep it simple, just say, you know, whatever happened to a question mark block, you know, like in some other game, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, they kinda did that. Heck, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, you know, they brought back how to unlock characters by just beating them up, right? So this one is codenamed Super Plus is because you get to play as the final bosses and the secret bosses. Yeah, so this is something new to some extent for the SNK fighting games. 2003 kind of did that with Mukai. I really don't like those branch type like requirement. It's just pain in the butt. Let's just say that. Just straightforward from beginning to end. Whatever happened to that one, keep it simple. And with heck, even Capcom vs. SNK 2 kind of did that. But you know, it is what it is. So in this one, you get to play, like I said, the final bosses, and those are Shin Akuma. You can recognize his color scheme, and of course in Street Fighter 5, believe it or not, Akuma that looks like a lion is technically what really the real definition of Shin Akuma, but you know, that's a different story there. And then of course Mr. Karate, or in this one is Serious Mr. Karate, and the difference is he has a black gi, and of course that same color scheme was also in King Fighter 13, Mr. Karate in that one. So I mean, it's kind of weird. You have Mr. Karate and then Serious Mr. Karate. From what I understand, the lore for Mr. Karate is that Mr. Karate is the same as Akuma, and Mr. Karate is the same as Shin Akuma as to Takuma is to Akuma, if that makes sense. But whatever. But the best part here, and this is something interesting, is the secret boss characters. Yes, there is a secret boss. Oh boy, they're uber powerful from when I tried them. And those are Athena from the actual Athena Classic series, the pre-Neo Geo, the Amazonian warrior who wears a bikini. I don't know why. Yeah, she's also in Neo Geo Battle Coliseum now as actually a legit playable character. And the other one is called Red Amar or Firebrand. I'm not kind of confused if they're two different characters. But of course, for people who don't know who that is the Red Gargoyle from Ghost and Goblin. Technically an enemy of Arthur. And of course, he made a comeback in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Ultimate. And of course, Infinite. So, surprisingly, but like I said, I have no idea if there's two different characters for that one. I have to do research on that one. But anyway, here we go. Codename Super Plus, where you get to play as the final bosses and the secret bosses, and see for yourself. And you know, if you think they're quote unquote SNK OP or overpowered. And yes, folks, as a surprise, fourth showcase for SVC Chaos, and that is the PlayStation 2 version of this game. SNK versus Capcom SVC Chaos. So I did talk about this on the first episode of 219, that there was a controversy in the US that this game was only the Xbox due to price issue. And of course, if you're really a person with common sense, you're really not gonna buy this for $50 unless you're an Uber fan. I mean, I guess if you're willing to pay Super Mario 3D All-Star for $60, maybe. I mean, they were selling it for the Xbox for $50, so whatever. That's a different story there. However, here's a little trick. This one is actually a PAL version. Yes, in Europe, it was actually released. However, it was published by Ignition. Also, the people in charge of releasing King Fighter 12, the ill-fated King Fighter installment, because it's just the lack of content, but that's a different story there. So in Europe, it was actually out on the PS2. Kind of bummed me out after a while, like when I found that out. But again, Ignition was the ones in charge, so it's not SNK Playmore USA. So again, for Playmore, screw you. So with that, the showcase here is that I'm going to show you the PS2 version, and oh boy, I'm gonna say this, it's still not worth $50, but with that said, they actually did a little bit of improvement with smoothing the graphics. And of course, this is the console version, they made it much easier. And of course, unlocking characters also is easy in this game. From what I heard, beat the character, and then once you do that, they'll tell you how to unlock a character, and it's easy. You hold the top button and you just push a button, the end, there you go, you play the bonus characters. So there you go. So with that, here it is, the PlayStation 2 version, PAL version, mind you, of SNK versus Capcom Chaos SVC. So 2020 finally comes in the end, and oh boy, it was really interesting. It wasn't really too exciting or a lot of happiness, but at least now 2020 is done. I'm looking forward to 2021. I know surprisingly that's an old fogey, but that's a different story. With that, this is going to be the last Mega Mix Game Show version 2 for 2020, episode 212, Capcom vs. SNK Mark of the Millennium. So I chose this one because if you notice in the past episode, I kind of did Capcom vs. SNK and its counterpart, SNK vs. Capcom, because those are my favorite crossover fighting game. Not too wild. Yeah, it's not simple, but it's kind of feel like a Street Fighter game. So with that, this is the sequel to Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000 with new characters, new grooves, and well, dynamic background graphics and balances. It was actually fun when I first bought it for the PlayStation 2. So with that, here it is, the very last MMGS version 2, episode 212, Capcom vs. SNK, Mark of the Millennium, and enjoy.